Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us on another episode of The Current. I'm with Prudence here. My name's Bo, and we're going to be talking about social media today. So this will be fun. Thanks so much for joining in. We know a lot of you have maybe just recently subscribed. We've seen a kind of a spike in subscribers on both YouTube and Apple Podcasts. So thank you. Thanks for joining with us. Again, we are hoping to put out content every Friday. And so let's jump in. Social media. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about maybe the downside, and then maybe end with some good things about social media. I know I'm passionate about a lack of social media use. I think it's it's myself personally. Don't use it a whole bunch just for my personal health. It's kind of a personal choice. Not that people shouldn't use it in general, but just for me, it's a good boundary just to kind of stay away. I can get sucked up in it pretty easily and it becomes damaging to me. But and so I was off Facebook for a long time just because, and very seldom will post to Instagram. I'm on Twitter a lot more.
Yes, you are.
I feel like Twitter's a little bit healthier space for me. But social media, I have a lot to say about it. But what are your just general thoughts?
Oh, general thoughts. Okay, wow. Well, I think it's interesting that you and I are talking about this right when we talked about having this as our topic, because I think you and I both have just this love-hate relationship with it of we see its potential. You know, we definitely, I think, both have seen and experienced the good of it, but I think you and I both really hate social media. For me, I love it because I live so far away from most of my friends and my family. And so it's a great way to stay connected and, stalk the people I went to high school with really casually, right? But it can be just such a toxic place. And I know last week, Curtis and I talked about mental health. And like you said, for me, creating boundaries in my time on social media and who I allow to be in that space with me, as far as like who I'm following, who I'm friends with, whatever the lingo is for whichever social media platform. Like, I'm really careful about those boundaries, and I'm constantly deleting and reinstalling apps and unfollowing people and muting people just because, I have to try to stay healthy in that space as best as I can.
Sure. Yeah. And that's a good point. I mean, I know when I was first getting off Facebook, people were like, oh, you can just unfollow people. But to me, it was more about some unhealthy use on my end. Like, for example, and I think this is a good, just practical point. I think if you're a Christian or you follow Jesus, this might be helpful for you to get your day started off right. I know for me, like, I would wake up and the first thing I would do is like get on Facebook, and like it just became just an awful way to start my day. Rather than like maybe using that opportunity to maybe center myself on Christ, or like, do something more productive with my time. Like when I first get up in the morning, but to just immediately get on social media, just not good for me. And there's a few reasons for that. And we'll talk about some of those reasons. But I think that brings up just really, I think, a first point that I think you'll kind of see a pattern as we talk through this is boundaries. Mm-hmm. And just like I would say with probably any other temptation in life is, things are great in moderation, and
Absolutely.
And I think social media is the same. You might have to have some very clear boundaries. Otherwise, again, you'll get sucked in and, before you know it, you look up and you've been on scrolling Facebook for 2.5 hours or, I think studies are showing this too, where like that, likes and stuff like that are becoming like those same kind of endorphins where like people are kind of living for that and they can't wait to see how much interaction this post gets, or and that's unhealthy.
Absolutely. And you never know like how much you're doing it until you check. Like if you are a person that has an iPhone and you've ever checked your screen time, like I don't know about you, but that has been mind blowing, and honestly, like, not to be all Jesus-y about it, but convicting for me of like, oh, I spent 6 hours on social media yesterday. Maybe I should not do that with my time, because you don't realize how time slips away.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll dive into some more of, I think, just the overall culture problems of social media. But I know for me, just like having the boundary of like saying, well, I'm only positive things on my end, just because I don't want to engage in any of the negativity. And honestly, I've kind of quit scrolling. Unless it's family stuff. Like I will type and like search in, maybe my parents or my brothers, or, like I will type in and just go to their page to kind of stay updated. But like the scrolling for me has just become so toxic. And now we kind of shift gears and talk more about, I think that whole issue of just like where social media is today and just what it has become. Because like you and I, we were talking about, we were like MySpace, like this is kind of what we grew up kind of, at least for me, it was more junior high when, it's like AOL Instant Messenger, MySpace really took off and blew up, and everybody had a MySpace page, and that was kind of the beginning of social media. But it was so different then than it is today.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there was just such a focus on, I think, connection and expressing yourself.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know about you, but like I felt like some computer hacker, like coding and adding themes to my MySpace page, or like rearranging your top 8 friends, and the drama that would ensue. And that was like junior high. So it's just so different now, because then it was just such a focus on connection and community and showcasing who you are. And now I think we've kind of lost some of, I forget when I'm scrolling through Instagram, and I have to remind myself, like, why am I actually here? Because otherwise, again, it leads to some of that toxicity.
Yeah. And we'll come back to that. And I think you're exactly right. I think social media used to be a place to connect, and that was the function. That was what it was for. Social. It was a social site where you could connect with people. And now I think the shift, just with the information age, and again, it's no one's fault really, but now it becomes the source for information for people on what's going on in the world and what's happening. And that's not good, by the way. And this is where I wanted to go with this, because in our culture, everyone feels like they're an expert. And I have this conversation all the time, especially the last few months. I've had this particular conversation with people. Even one of the guys that I work out with, we were talking about this, how experts need to be trusted. Yes. And like, just for me as a pastor, as an example, I would hope that people would come to me for spiritual advice, knowing that like, hey, I've got the experience, I've got the knowledge to be able to help them spiritually. Yep. Because I'm the expert in that field. Well, I mean, I'm not, like, it's what I do. It's like, it's my job, you know? And so I think there's, for some reason we've lost that, where we feel like that, oh, I've read it somewhere, well, then I'm an expert now. I have an opinion. And again, just because you've read something, or just because it's probably only one side, by the way. You probably are in an echo chamber of the information that you like to get and skewed how you like it. Again, that's maybe not your fault, but that's just how it is. You surround yourself with people that think like you do, and that's where you get information from the sources you like, and I get that. But to become an expert, you have to have a wide variety of knowledge and understanding of both sides to be able to speak to an issue. And I feel like today on social media especially, that everyone just feels like they're an expert, and I can just say this as facts because this is what I, and it's just like everybody's an expert on every topic, and that's the stuff I can't stand, where you can't have healthy dialogue and conversation on a particular topic, and this was several years ago now, but like I would post just a fact and there'd be like 18 comments about why the fact wasn't true. Yep. Like the carpet's green. No, it's not. It's this, and this. I'm like, okay, like you're just like literally you talk about just paralyzing somebody to like, this is dumb. Like I'm getting off of here because I can't state a fact without people just jumping down my throat, telling me why it's wrong because I guess they're experts in the color field or like, or whatever. Like it's just, and I know they're not an expert in the color field because it's a plumber or who, like it's like, okay, but I guess you're an expert. So, and it's just stuff like that where like, it's just I guess it's more of just the culture, like it's the climate, just how people interact is just like, to me, like that's a big issue where everybody acts like an expert.
Yeah. And especially on social media, I think we see that perception is reality, and my reality is now my truth. And, you need to get on board or get out is kind of the attitude. And I would say one thing that we also have to be careful of is not only is everyone an expert on social media, everyone's now trying to sell something. Yeah. Right. Like we see people constantly like trying to sell things, or, there's this idea now of people as brands, right? And I'm not just talking about influencers, but I see this even, with people I went to school with who are trying to like grow their followings or like we're all selling ourselves, like literally we're selling our information and our data, but which is another thing to be careful of. But, you just have to ask, with every post you encounter, like, what is the agenda behind it? Like, what are people trying to get you to believe? What are they trying to persuade you about? And what are they trying to get you to literally buy into?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's just so many more, like, social media has just become the standard of interacting with people, especially having dialogue on controversial topics, or it just become the standard. And we just lost creativity in how to actually potentially change our mind, engage with stuff that maybe we're not comfortable with, engage with another side that you may not believe in. It has just become like, well, I'm just going to post on social media, or I'm just going to talk to him here. Like, instead of doing the hard work of maybe making a phone call or sitting down with somebody, and having a conversation, it has just become the like, we're just done being creative. We're just done being like doing the hard work. We're just going to argue online. And I don't know, I'm sure, hopefully you guys can relate to this. Maybe you're the same way, but like, there was a time in my life in which, like, I was saying stuff, typing stuff, like, on a screen that I would have never said in person.
Oh yeah.
And I think if people are being honest, they're the same way. Whereas, like, if I was sitting in a coffee shop, maybe this is post-COVID, but we're all sitting in a coffee shop, there's a bunch of people in there, we're having a conversation, and there might be somebody that kind of overhears something I say, they're not going to come over and correct me.
Right.
They're just not going to do it. But if you see it online, by golly, I'm going to tell you you're wrong right here, right now.
Exactly.
Like, you're in the wrong here. And it's just not healthy. That's not like normal human interaction should be.
No.
Like, I don't know you that well. Like, who are you to, like, jump down my I've talked to you 3 times. Like, or like, I was friends with you in high school. I haven't talked to you in 10 years. Like, we don't have a relationship. Therefore, like, that's when it becomes like, I'm just going to dismiss you. I don't care what you have to say because I don't have a relationship with you. And it just kind of, again, we lose the creativity. We lose the human just kind of element of what should be healthy, constantly growing, learning conversations. And it just is not that. It's just become harsh.
Yeah,
and
literally.
Stale.
This morning, first thing, I had posted something that I didn't think was that edgy or spicy on my Instagram story. And I woke up this morning and it said I had a message request from some random private account. And they were just like going after me, just attacking me. And I went to the account. I have no idea who the person is. It probably was a bot, but just that's how I started my day, with deleting a message request and blocking someone that I didn't know because they felt like, because of the internet, they could attack me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so interesting.
Yeah. And so personally, and I think just kind of the culture amongst us here at Rhythm, I think we want to create a space where people feel comfortable to sit down and have a conversation. And this has been really cool because we've had some great conversations with people that really disagree with maybe a particular stance at our church or like a conviction we have. And those conversations have been so good. And what's great is that almost every time, once they hear our heart, once they hear really what we're like as people, they see us as people, like, they leave so encouraged, just knowing like, okay, I get it now. Like, I understand your heart. We were able to have a conversation. And again, that's just lost in social media. It's just lost, like, the ability to actually connect, feel someone's heart, get their, like, their reasoning, have a face-to-face conversation, or a conversation on the phone even would be more helpful. But it's just such a toxic space in that regard, where it's just like, and all I see is just fighting, like, again, I have to stop scrolling, but it's just, let me tell you you're wrong. Here's how you're wrong. Here's why you're wrong,
Yeah, exactly. There's so much more nuance. Again, the internet's a beautiful thing. It's a great way to connect with people, under the right circumstances, but there's so much nuance. Even, I think about in this conversation right now, you're saying, like, the statement, like, social media can be a toxic space, but, I can tell from your posture, from your tone of voice, like, you're not angry about that. But if you were this morning to just, like, tweet out, social media is a toxic space. Like, we're going to read between the lines. I'm going to fill in whatever story about you I want to tell, because I'm not there with you in that space. And I have no idea the intent behind that? You
Sure.
know, is it a tweet that's a joke? You know what I mean? Is this
that's really
calling people out? And so I think we just have to be really careful about what dots are we connecting and how are we connecting them? What blanks are we filling in that we don't need to be filling in because we don't know these people well, and if we want to understand them, we need to actually, you know, reach out and seek to understand them before we attack them. And as followers of Christ, we shouldn't be attacking at all.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah. And that's what I was just going to piggyback off that and just say, just as a practical point, like you can disagree with somebody and not say anything. Like that is okay. If you see a post you disagree with, if again, you're a follower of Jesus, you're a Christian, I would encourage you to scroll on by. It is okay. God is bigger than you defending whatever you need to defend or feel like you need to defend on social media. Maybe instead, get coffee with him. Talk to him about it. Like you can keep scrolling. You don't have to comment on everything you disagree with. And you're just painting this picture, like you're just saying, which you said it amazing. Like you're filling in dots or you're connecting dots that maybe are not there because you don't know, you know, like you can't, it's hard to read tone and posture and, you know, humility. And so, so I think just like you said too, just as Christians having this humble posture of saying, okay, like why am I here? What is the point? Why am I on social media? Is my heart really to connect with family and friends, or is it to share information and tell everybody they're wrong? You know, like it really is a heart check. And I kind of want to shift gears just for a second here. Unless you have something else.
I just wanted to add one thing to that. And that is, I do think that, I mean, we saw Jesus get angry. We see Jesus in the Gospels flipping tables over. And I do think that there's a space to be, you know, frustrated with things we see. But there's a way to deal with that. Like if, for example, and she would never do this, so I love you, Madeline, I'm not throwing you under the bus, but like if I saw my sister post something horrible, if I saw her like tweet like the N-word or something, then that's a space where I would call her out on social media, but I would also talk to her in person, you know, but that is a relational thing. I think there's also something to be said about holding leaders accountable. You know, if you want to throw in that same situation, if you see, you know, your mayor or your pastor or a leader in authority posting something just outlandish, evil, horrible, like I don't think that it's bad to call them out on that necessarily. But I do think you just have to be guarded about your emotional investment. And again, wary of how you are portraying yourself and therefore Jesus on the internet.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I'll just share this story real quick because I think you're spot on. Several months ago, I was on Twitter and using Twitter, but I posted some tweets that came across to someone in our church that's also involved in our school district, came across as me kind of undermining our district and like their authority and like what they wanted to do on a particular topic. And I didn't realize it was coming across that way. Like I was just like making a case for like, I mean, I coach in the district, so I was making a case for athletes and like wanted them to be honored, but I didn't realize it came across as like, well, the school district's not doing something they should be. But anyway, but what I loved about that is that person reached out to me. They didn't just like tweet back at me and, you know, like they reached out to me privately. And then of course, like I took the tweets down and like, I have no problem. Like, again, someone's holding me accountable on there, but they did it in a way that was very respectful. And, you know, we had a conversation about it and it was great. So I think you're exactly right. I do think there should be accountability but handling it the right way is so appropriate. So yeah, we talked a lot about the culture there, just kind of how social media works today. But I want to shift gears a little bit and talk more about how social media can just begin to affect you emotionally, your self-esteem, because I think that's a whole nother issue. And there's kind of a phrase that gets thrown around, and I think it is accurate, you know, but I think oftentimes like social media, what it causes is where you understand your life, but you're seeing everyone else's highlight reel, you know, and so your perception of your life is vastly different in how it operates than what you're seeing everybody else's online. And so it does create, you know, like self-image issues, self-esteem issues, like because all you're seeing is the vacation photos, you know, and you can't afford to take a vacation, and what's wrong with my life because everybody else is going on vacation, you know, and things like that. You see the beautiful family photo, but what you don't see is the fight they had 2 hours before, you know? And so you're thinking, well, we always fight as a family. they look amazing, So
Right.
again, it just kind of creates this contrast. And I think that's a whole nother issue, is people aren't necessarily, I don't think, as vulnerable as they should be on the internet with posts or pictures or struggles. And I think just posting your highlight reel, whether you realize it or not, might be affecting people negatively.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think social media, because it's a good space for connection, is a great space to share that. Like, have there been certain photos I've taken just so I could put them on Instagram? Of course. Haven't we all done that? Right. But I do think, like you said, you have to be so careful, and you have to remind yourself that other people are multifaceted. We've all got a lot going on. And so like this one happy moment, while that's great for them, like you have to know that people are real people. And so they have, the same struggles and issues or different struggles that you're having. And, it's not all filtered and sunshine all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think people understand that. And I think it just kind of creeps in. It's one of those things that like, like after a while you're thinking, oh gosh, like my life is nothing like theirs. Like, but all you're seeing, and of course they're probably proud of those moments, and they love those pictures, or they love the stories that are so great and amazing, and they want to share those with the world. And that's good. But I just wanted to mention that quickly, just how I think sometimes that can happen as well. It can become a space in which you, after looking on it or dealing with it or being in a space, you can sometimes walk away feeling discouraged, just because like my life's a mess and it seems like everyone else's is put together. Yeah. So I know I've experienced that as well, but I think so just to recap here briefly, we talked about just kind of our kind of stories with social media and like our boundaries and the need for boundaries.
Yeah.
Talked about like a posture of humility, and we're not all experts, and which I think's really good. But social media is also very good. Kind of talked about that as well. There's some really good things about it, and I just want to talk about some of those as we close. Just some of the positive things about social media. Although I may not use it a whole lot personally, our organization, Rhythm Church, uses it often, and we're intentional about that. And really, the reason we use it most is it's essentially like a front door for people. I mean, there's a lot of people that will check out our Facebook page, they'll check out our website before they'll ever step foot into our building or in the park. So, and that is important to us. And really it's an advertising piece. What we're putting out there is we're advertising on behalf of our organization. This is what we're about. This is who we are. This is, and we can also celebrate people. We do that some too. We celebrate stories. Like, we just provided a bunch of backpacks for kids at school, post that on social media. So we're celebrating like things in our church as well. But for us, it is a very, very effective form of advertising. And we'll advertise for events. Like if we were going to have Rock the Block this year, we would have spent a good amount of money on Facebook ads or social media ads, just in general, because it's such an effective form of getting your organization, or even if you sell a product or whatever, in the face of people, because that's where people are. I know you read some stats on just how many people are
my goodness,
on social media.
Okay. And you guys, I know the numbers are not always interesting, but this it blew my mind. So keeping in mind, when I Googled it, the U.S. population right now, and this is a very American-centric podcast because, hello, we're in America. So the U.S. population is 328 million. Okay. So keep that in mind. So on average, 1.79 billion people log onto Facebook daily. That's not how many total users there are. That's how many people are logging in every single day.
Wow.
And about 69% of US adults use Facebook. Okay, so that's mind-blowing. For Instagram, again, keeping in mind that the US has 328 million people, on Instagram, there are 120.7 million users just in the US. That's over a third of the US population is on Instagram. Another one, 73% of US adults use YouTube. And of the global internet population, so anyone in the whole world who has access to the internet, 95% of them watch YouTube.
Oh my gosh.
And this is to say nothing of the stats about Snapchat or TikTok or Twitter or Pinterest or whatever, insert social media here. But is that not mind-blowing?
That is. And so you got to understand our heart as a church is we want to get the message of Jesus everywhere we can.
Yes.
I mean, our mission is to help people find and follow the real Jesus. And that mission is not limited to Mason City. It's not limited to North Iowa. Our hope is to paint a picture of Jesus that is real and authentic as far as we possibly can. And that excites me. We've started a YouTube channel to think that, 95% of people that have internet access in the world today are watching YouTube. That's exciting. I mean, it's exciting. And as a Christian, that is another thing I would say as social media is a great platform to express your faith and to tell people about Jesus. And I think that's good. And that's ultimately why we use it. And it's just like being able to connect with people all across the globe via the social media or just online is amazing. And I think that's really cool. And that's a good thing. It is a very good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we see in the Gospels, Jesus met people where they were at. He didn't say, okay, come see me in the temple, right? He was walking around, preaching on the seashore, meeting people in the cities. Like, he was with the people. And right now, this is where people are. And especially, right now where there's so much social distancing still, people are still working from home. Like, not only are we missing out on that like real life person to person connection, like we have to find it somehow, somewhere. And while social media might not be, an exact substitute, like it's what we have, right now in this digital age. And I think that's so important. And, I think it's important for people to know that for Rhythm Church, like not only is this an advertising tool, because I think that can kind of sound yucky sometimes, right? Of like, we want to sell you on our church. Like we need, like, yes, we want people to come into our doors, but beyond that, like we see this as a ministry tool. And we're a small staff. We're not going to do this as well as other places necessarily, but this is a place where we can encourage you. We want to disciple you through this podcast. We want to disciple you through the YouTube videos we put for, Monday morning reset, or, when we post a sermon video. We share encouraging graphics and scriptures or whatever little thoughts we want to help you connect. So we share, when our events are, when you can be there. And we want to educate you. And it's so much more than just advertising. It's really bringing our community that we've had in person online. And we're still navigating it, and social media is always changing. And so our approach is probably going to change a lot, even in the next few months. But it's really important to us now to just meet people where they are and try to present the gospel and disciple people and get them to love and follow Jesus as best as they can. And this is how we're going to try to do it for a while.
That's right. So good. Yeah. So hopefully you see our heart and really our intention. And in fact, we started a series last Sunday about this idea of being the church, not just on Sunday morning, but throughout the week. And this is all part of that. It's kind of some vision that we're going to cast for the future is, and Rhythm has always said this, that we're a church that exists outside of these four walls. We've never been the church that's focused on our building. I mean, you can look at our building. It's like a warehouse, it's like we've never been like the, like I got the great building type church. And I think there's a lot of beauty in that. And whether it is online or YouTube or whatever, we can be the church more than just an hour a week. And this is part of that. This is being the church right here, having conversations about how do Christians interact with social media? What is, what's the proper way? How do we, still portray Christ in an online form? And so, so you'll see more, of that conversation coming up. And like we said, last Sunday, we started a series on this idea of just being the church all the time. And that includes social media. So be a representation of Christ online is the last thing I would say.
And I think just to jump back on that, I think that sometimes we misconstrue what it means to represent Christ online, right? Like as a pastor, I don't feel a need to post like the Bible verse of the day every day on my Instagram. Sure. Actually, I don't know that I've ever felt that impulse. It's kind of cheesy to me, but if that's your thing, great. But I think that just being there, engaging people, people know that I'm a follower of Christ. And so whatever I say, whatever picture I post, whatever tweet I tweet, whatever I do online, people are seeing that as a representation of Jesus, even if it's not necessarily like a churchy, like Jesus-y thing.
Yep.
So whether that's me liking something maybe on Twitter that people can see that's kind of sketchy, right? Or commenting on someone's Facebook post in an angry or even derogatory way, people see that and they know that I'm representing Jesus. So while you don't have to necessarily preach via your social media, I think you do have to be aware at all times of the fact that you are representing Christ.
That's right. Yeah. So good. And that would be my heart today, is that people would, exactly what you said. You are representing Christ in how you engage, how you respond, what you like. You're exactly right.
Yeah. Because on the other side of the computer or the phone, there's a human being. There's a human being that is known and valued and loved by our Father God, a human being that Jesus died for. And we forget that. I forget that.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. It's so good. I think we'll end there. We'll end on that thought. That's so good. Yeah. So if you haven't yet, be sure to like this video if you're on YouTube, or subscribe to the channel. We're on Apple Podcasts, actually on Spotify now as well. So
yes. Yay, Android users.
I can't forget that. So yeah, if you're on Android, be sure to look us up on Spotify. We have on the podcast side, we have both a podcast for the church, which has like most of our sermons. And then you'll have to, if you look Rhythm Church, it should maybe pop up too, but this one will be the current. So you can find both of those there. We'd love to continually connect with you. We'll be back next Friday.
Yeah. See you then.
All right.